Everything is flipped upside down. The scientific research that is promoted by our government and by our education to turn everything good into bad and to flip everything upside down. Sexuality and sex is not a social construct, it's a biological reality. Psychiatric needs do not subside after the medical gender reassignment. We must acknowledge biological reality. We must over and over and over again acknowledge it and support that reality. And then we have to recognize the psychological complexity of those who are struggling in the whole area of gender identity. Parents who have been cut off and had their children removed because they wouldn't affirm that child's delusion. Their parents aren't supporting them in their transitioning. But true support of the child has been robbed from parents because they're told to support a delusion, they're told to lie to their children. And the other thing is, if they refuse to lie to the children, then their parents are ripped away from them because they are told they can't trust their parents.
Hello and welcome to tonight's show, where we provide information and resources for everyday Canadians. We're so thankful you can join us. Our guest speaker this evening is Dr. Ann Gillies, and the title of tonight's show is Bill C-9, The War on Biological Reality. We welcome you to part 3 of this current series. Be sure to head over to our website to catch up on the first 2 episodes if you've missed them. It's April 8th, 2026, and this is the Empower Hour. If this is your first time joining us, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Tanya Gaw, the founder and leader of Action for Canada. Tanya and the Action for Canada team are committed to bringing public awareness to the many serious issues facing our nation, including tonight's topic concerning BC-9 and the war on biological reality. Will you all please help me welcome Tanya Gaw. Hello, Tanya.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for that. You always give such a great intro to all that we're doing. I appreciate that. And I appreciate particularly today the video that you created with the battle that we're having within the schools and for the hearts and minds of our children. And that's going to be part of the biggest portion of our topic tonight. This war has been going on for many years. I'm excited to bring our guest on after I provide a few updates because Dr. Ann Gillies and I have known each other pre-COVID. A lot of you woke up, and I'm thankful for that because of the so-called COVID measures. We know that that was a horrible fraud, and it's harmed a lot of people, but it has also done something that Canada needed for a long time coming, and that was to help alert us to what was going on in the highest levels of government to the lowest levels of government. I mean, this has been a strategic takeover to get globalists into these positions. And part of that, we've talked about this Marxist ideology and that they're using our schools to pump out, using our children as agents of change. And they haven't even been shy about telling us their agenda. And it is so dark, so demonic, so evil when we consider what they're physically doing to our kids and the mental torture that they are putting them through. And so Bill C-9 is that next step towards continuing this evil agenda. And the first week, in part 1, it was Bill C-9, War on Christianity. And if you didn't see it, I encourage you to do that. I gave a deep dive presentation into how our money, billions of dollars, is funding the LGBTQ war machine to do the groundwork for then the government and to press on them to put policies into place. And so Bill C-9 is part of that agenda. This war machine was going and hitting the churches because we know that Christian nations are the only ones that truly celebrate and enjoy democracy. And you can't have a Marxist, communist, Islamist, because that's right on the agenda there too, country if without destroying and taking down biblical Christian principles. And that's why there's this massive attack on the scripture, which was second week, where we brought on Sarah, a detransitioner. I hate even using the term as detransition. It wasn't. I mean, they have mutilated and disfigured children's bodies. And I think that we need to talk about the facts of this, because there is no such thing as a trans child. But Sarah came on and gave her testimony. And I think that as many people in this country as possible should hear it, and that you should share it with your senators in your province. That's a campaign that's going to be coming out through Action for Canada, is to get her message out. I'll be showing another detransitioner tonight as well. And so with that, tonight's show is Bill C-9, the War on Biological Reality. So all of this is working together to help you to understand all the different ways that Bill C-9 is being used to attack our societal norms, our Christian foundation, and to just turn this country upside down, and to censor our speech, of course. So I'm just going to share screen. And I'm going to start with some good news, some great wins that we are experiencing. And I want you to understand how important your part is, that when Action for Canada sends out actions, we're not doing that just for the sake of it. We're doing it so that the all levels of government can hear how the majority of the population is feeling, because they've been lobbied very heavily by minority groups who were the squeaky wheel, who got their attention because all of us were silent because we didn't know what was going on. But now we have no excuses. Everybody in society is having this pushed in their face and shoved down their throats, and this compelled speech, and we're all fed up with it. We are the majority. We have the power and the strength to overturn this, but we have to be strategic about it. So your calls to action, Action for Canada has been one of the ones on the front line that has been trying to ring the warning bells against SOGI 123, known as When Sex Ed Beyond the Basics. And it's in every single province, but sometimes as another name. And it's all known as comprehensive sexuality education. And Dr. Ann Gillies has also been one of those people that's been ringing the bell and on the front lines of this battle as well. So with Action for Canada, one of the wonderful things that has transpired is that we are achieving some, I'm just going to go back because I've just lost there. We've been achieving some wonderful wins through the actions that you've participated in. And Alberta is the headliner this week. I mean, they have passed new legislation that is in direct response to Action for Canada's calls to action for the last couple of years. And the reason I've started with this image is because we've hit the drag queens, the books, the SOGI 123. We've been lobbying government, providing them the evidence of measurable harm, and Alberta was the first. Well, sorry, Saskatchewan was the first in 2023 when we were meeting with the government and serving them notices of liability and showing the measurable harms that we got SOGI 123 shut down. And now Alberta has taken that step. A couple of great wins this week, if you haven't heard, through Bill 25 and Bill 28, is we rallied last year after they had removed the pornographic and sexually explicit books. Daniel Smith actually called them what they are, from the public schools. But there are 55 schools in Alberta that are municipal public libraries. Sorry, there's, in 55 schools in Alberta, 55 municipal public libraries, which meant that the removal of the books from all the schools didn't apply to the public libraries within the schools. And so we were saying, you got to close this loophole. So we created a letter, and people en masse copied, pasted, and sent it. And this week, they have truly responded in the best way possible. So they passed an act to remove politics and ideology from classrooms and to amend the Education Act. That is huge. That means all of the CRT, the DEI, the land acknowledgements, and the SOGI 123 must be removed. Those are the political and ideologies that are flowing through the classrooms. I won't go into much detail now, but we'll be telling you about more work that Action for Canada is doing as far as the teachers that are having this forced down their throats as well. If we're going to remove this from the classrooms, then we've got to ensure that the teachers also are not being compelled to teach this, or are not having to take courses in order to deliver this message to the children. So there is more work that is coming on this, and it's to supporting age-appropriate access in public libraries is the other win through Bill 28. And so those 55 public schools, it's going to apply, public libraries, it's going to apply to all public libraries across Alberta, but specifically our concern was the public libraries within the school system. Now, the only thing that I would stress, they put an age on it. They're going to put these books, these miserable, nasty books in a room on their own, that adults 16 or the age of 16 or over can access them. And if there is a public library in a public school, it should be to adulthood. Otherwise, remove these public libraries from the schools and replace them with school libraries, so that it is consistent throughout. And this was just the headline. Bill 28, Alberta limits sexual content access in public libraries, introduces municipal code of conduct, bans the vacancy tax, which is separate. But anyways, massive, huge win. And I believe this is just going to be the beginning of the end. Other provinces are going to follow. I think BC and Ontario, until we get new governments in those, Doug Ford and David Eby, they talk a certain talk, but they don't actually care about our children. Our children are being seriously harmed, and we need to make sure we call them out. We did a really big call to action recently, specific on Soji, after the mass murder of children here in British Columbia by the young man that was trying to identify as a woman. And David Eby turned around and said it was an AI problem. They should have notified him of his mental illness. No, it's the fact that this is in the schools indoctrinating our children. So ABC News has also reported that Trump administration terminates agreements to protect transgender students in several schools. Again, this ripples across. They make this decision in one area and it goes from state to state. It's fabulous what's going on country to country. Here we have again that Belarus bans promotion of LGBT ideology, pedophilia, and childlessness. To go down and read this article, it makes you want to move to Belarus. So stay in Canada. We need you here helping to fight. Okay, right before we bring Dr. Ann on, I wanted to play this video of this young woman who had been lured into this trans demonic nonsense, and you can just hear the emotion and how it's affected her life.
My name is Claire, and I'm a detransitioner. A week after I turned 14 years old, I was put on testosterone by Dr. May Lau at Cook Children's Hospital in Dallas, Texas. 6 months later, Dr. Alan Doolin with the American Institute for Plastic Surgery in Plano performed a double mastectomy on me. I was too young to get a tattoo. I was too young to drive. I hadn't even learned algebra in high school yet. But I was old enough to choose to have healthy parts of my body electively amputated. I was sold a product, medical transition, by professionals and institutions who told me that it would fix my distress and save my life. I was told that if I didn't do this, I would probably end up dead. But here's what they didn't tell me. They didn't tell me that taking cross-sex hormones and undergoing major surgery at 14 years old could leave me with pelvic floor dysfunction and urinary incontinence, problems I have to manage now as a young adult. I'm only 20 years old. They didn't tell me that these complications are common enough to be known risks, and yet they were hidden from me at an age where I didn't even understand what these terms meant, let alone the impact they would have on my daily life. And it doesn't stop there. When I tried to warn others by leaving honest reviews on my surgeon's websites, describing my regret, the complications, the lack of real informed consent, my reviews were deleted. Think about that. A surgeon permanently altered my healthy body when I was a middle school student, and then erased my negative feedback to protect his reputation. If that doesn't sound like fraud, I don't know what does. In any other context, selling a medical product in this way, with half-truths and hidden side effects, would be considered fraud. If a pharmaceutical company pushed a drug on children without disclosing the lifelong damage it can cause, they would be sued out of existence. If a cosmetic surgeon buried evidence of complications, they would be shut down. But when it comes to gender medicine, it's not just allowed, it's celebrated. And anyone who asks questions is called hateful. Every week, I hear from more young men and women like me, people who are convinced as kids or as teenagers that the only way to survive was to become a lifelong medical patient. We now live with the irreversible consequences, the scars, the side effects, the pain, and the grief. And we watch helplessly as the same professionals and clinics keep selling the same product to the next generation of vulnerable kids while silencing those of us who speak out. My name is Claire.
So you can just imagine you're feeling the exact same way that I am. Last week, we had precious Sarah on the show, who at the age of 14, this cult got a hold of her and started urging her to go down this path. They facilitated her to have the surgeries to permanently disfigure her body. They filled her with the drugs, the hormone replacement and puberty blockers and the drugs to dumb her down as well. And we know how harmful all of this is. There is nobody that can say they haven't been informed. And that's why serving our notices of liability to every single school board trustee in this country who is supporting this and putting them on notice that liability is coming. We don't know who, but we know that there's individuals who are indeed going to be brought to court for the crimes against humanity that have been committed against our children en masse in this country. And I just wanted to at the time of the show, I didn't have Sarah's Give, Send, Go available, but if you find that video on our Rumble page with Sarah's interview last week, you will see the Give, Send, Go. It's also on the webpage we created for her. Please consider she was abandoned by the government, by the radical activists who lured her down this path. She had zero support, and it cost tens of thousands of dollars to try to undo even remotely slightly the damage. And she talked about the hair removal and the cost of that as a young woman to go out with, we see grandma maybe with a few dark hairs and on the chin. We have the option of a little bit of electrolysis or plucking a couple of hairs out for these people. But these young women are having to get out of bed every day and face this. And there is no wonder why the suicide rate is high amongst these children. And I call them children because that's when they are affected. So they're going into young adulthood, having been indoctrinated, and we must put a stop to it. I keep bringing up Dr. McLean every single week. I'm going to make this man famous. Our Dr. Mengele, who is mutilating thousands and thousands of girls' bodies. In many of the images, I could scroll all the way down this page, but I'm going to keep showing it every time I talk about this issue. This is Dr. McLean here. He really feels that he's, on this noble mission to disfigure all of these young women who have been indoctrinated, who have had mental health issues. And I say it's fabricated mental health issues that's going on within our education systems, and we must bring a stop to it. And Sarah's testimony specifically was that it was scripture that saved her life. And it's scripture that have saved many deep so-called transitioning people's lives, to give them hope, to give them a community that will actually love on them and support them instead of abandon and reject them. And so that in closing here, there is this massive new report that's come out of Finland. It goes, a chartered clinical psychologist just called gender transitioning the biggest medical scandal of our time. And this Finnish study just proved her right. So Dr. Joseph of GB News reacting to a massive registry, it goes, the study examined 2,083 individuals under 23 matched against 16,643 controls between 1996 and 2019. So this isn't a small study. And the results, they say, are devastating. Before referral, 45.7% of gender-referred youth had psychiatric morbidity, After gender affirming interventions, the surgeries, the hormones, the puberty blockers, that number didn't improve. It got worse. 61.7% had psychiatric morbidity 2 or more years after referral, compared to 14.6% in the control group. Dr. Joseph was unsparing. Gender affirming care is a disaster, but this proves it now. The evidence is incontrovertible that the phalloplasties, all the medioplasties, the chest stuff they did, made these youngsters considerably worse. Well, no kidding. Because there is no way there was informed consent. These children were not mature enough to understand the decisions they were making. And then she went further to say they lied, they hid, they obfuscated. She compared it to John Money's infamous case with the Reimer twins. He was the guy that completely mutilated these boys. These kids they ended up, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Ann, when I bring you on, I believe they both committed suicide because of the experiments that they did on these children. So anyways, I encourage you to go through and to look up this report and read it. And she's saying that therapists 100% know that what they're telling their children, they say one thing we do in psychology is we never attribute suicide to a single cause. That is 101 psychology. To say, just say it is because your child is the wrong sex is unethical. She said therapists telling children they'll kill themselves without transitions are literally teaching children to be suicidal. We call it making misattributions. And therapists know about this. They know they are doing wrong. And so with that, I'm going to bring Dr. Ann Gillies on. At the end of the show, we are going to have a time for Q&A. So I would encourage you to also, if you have questions ready, please make sure that you're signed on to our Zoom link. There is an option that you can also write your responses, your questions there. So Heather, would you please bring Dr. Ann on?
Thank you, Tanya. It's always a pleasure to have Dr. Ann Gillies join us on the Empower Hour. Ann is a wife, mother, grandmother, professional counselor, ordained pastor, international speaker, trauma specialist, author of several books, and the founder of Restoring the Mosaic, a ministry which seeks to educate and inform politicians, community leaders, and pastors across Canada. Her research is in the area of child and adult attachment, trauma, same-sex attraction, gender dysphoria, and the current transgender phenomenon. Ann is a voice of reason and an advocate for our innocent, vulnerable children who are being psychologically and physically harmed by the indoctrination of gender-affirming ideology. Will you all please help me welcome Dr. Ann Gillies to the Empower Hour? Dr. Ann, welcome. It's so good to have you back on the show.
Great to be here. It's really, really good to be back. Smiling is the word, right?
Yeah, Dr. Ann, it's been a while. Thank you, Heather. And I was really looking forward to having you on the show. As I've been going through this series, I was thinking, what should the next step be? And it's like, yeah, this massive fraud with what they're doing to our kids and the biological reality being challenged. And who better to talk on this issue than yourself? And is there anything, first of all, I'm sorry that, it takes me a few minutes to go through those headlines. I know you and I could speak for hours on this issue to try and train and alert and educate our viewers on what is transpiring. But one, I believe our viewers need to be encouraged that taking action is having a very positive effect and helping us to win this battle and overturn it. So that's vital. And then to hear from detransitioners who this is the real life. This is what they're facing and will face for the rest of their life while the rest of us go on with ours. And so we have a duty and responsibility to protect our children and not to shy away from the controversy, which is something that you have definitely been willing to do. And I'm so appreciative for that you've used your gifts and talents to speak the radical truth.
Well, it's interesting. It has been a journey. Unfortunately, there's not many pastors really that speak up for the children in this whole area of gender affirmation and mutilation. Very few, even now. And maybe they're speaking quietly in their churches, and I hope that's true, but not in the marketplace. And I mean, there's a few of us, but it's been very, very sparse. And so I'm hoping that that will increase too, because what you're exposing and what I've been exposing for many years is this huge, huge movement to mutilate and abuse our children, but not just the children. Parents have been so abused, blackmailed into agreeing to things, to atrocities that no one would ever have imagined a parent would agree to, because doctors have blackmailed them into it. And it's just, I'm waiting for the lawsuits. I'm waiting for the lawsuits between the medical association, the psychological associations, the teachers unions, and the Department of Education's. Like, they have corrupted the minds of children and the whole generation, plus the parents. It's just the most horrific thing I think we could ever have imagined.
Well, I'm looking at it as a parent myself. If I had to stand back or feel forced to watch my daughter get mutilated, for the fact that if I didn't support her, then that community of people would just take her from me and under their arms. So some people parents have been criticized for even allowing it. I think that I would literally take my child and just leave wherever I was. I would take my child and create a whole new environment so that all of those influences were gone. It is so difficult. You and I went through the fight against what was originally Bill C-6, turned into Bill C-4 when it got passed, the conversion therapy ban. And that was a real hit, not only to parents if they didn't support now their child coming home, with this delusion that had been implanted into their mind. Parents could go to jail for 5 years, but it also affected counselors, therapists, pastors, that if they did anything other than affirm those children, they faced 5 years in prison as well. So, Dr. Ann, how do you feel this next step with Bill C-9? I mean, with the organizations, I'm meeting in private with some groups, and we're coming out and saying they don't have a right to do this. It's just because they can sign saying something and say, thus it is so, like the conversion therapy ban, doesn't mean that that is legitimate. It's illegal. It's taking away parental rights. And so I look at Bill C-9 the same way. How are you viewing Bill C-9?
Well, very similarly. And I think when you look back at Bill C-6, Bill C-4, they merged, a lot of that was smoke and mirrors. They use language to, kind of hit us over the head. Conversion therapy, there's never been such a thing. Like, those are two very different elements. Conversion is talking about a religious experience, and therapy is talking about, of course, a psychological practice. And it's like, conversion therapy, what is that? And to think that they just want to silence professionals, pastors, and parents from helping their own children, and from helping those children that came to them, or even adults. And so to shut that all down, and just recently, Matthew Gretsch from Malta was found not guilty. He was, and I don't know if you heard about this, Tanya, but he actually had been in court for about 4 years for simply is invited by a local radio station to give his testimony. So he's formerly a gay man who left that kind of lifestyle and then shared about it. And some MP or somebody from Parliament heard it and decided that that was, conversion therapy. I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. And so he's been in the court system for a long time, and just last month was found not guilty. Yeah. Thank God. That's a real win. I think we're going to see more of those kind of wins. I think there's some stuff happening in the US, and I think it's time in Canada to do some pushback with Bill C-9, Bill C-4, as well as pushing back against Bill C-9, because all of it is meant to silence truth. Mm-hmm. It's meant to silence the public. and professionals who would speak truth. And this Bill C-9, or the hate speech bill, like, what is that? Like, we are not a hateful people as generally. And for sure, Christians, I mean, we are, of all people, Bible believing Christians are committed to loving people, not to accepting every form of debauchery, because the Bible doesn't accept those. And that's the problem for the government now, because the Bible has some pretty important things to say about sexuality. And that kind of leads into where we're going tonight. But I think when we begin to sit back and realize, and as pastors and leaders and other people begin to see where this could go, I think there will be pushback. The concern, though, Tanya, is that, there's a lot of Christians out there that actually are saying, well, we shouldn't hate other people. This is probably a good bill. And I want to pull my hair out by roots, because you know what that's like. It's like, okay, let's take this apart a little bit. And I have not taken it apart. I have a meeting in Alberta, in Calgary next week, and we're going to be doing some taking apart, and hopefully talking with other pastors as well, and to really look at this and kind of come together and say, hey, how are we going to fight this? And the reality is, just as you and I have stood in the gap, I believe truly we stood in the gap for children with this whole issue of gender ideology. But to stand in the gap means that you have to embrace the reality that you could go to jail for what you're doing. That's the reality, isn't it, Tanya?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm saying, if enough of us all stand up at once, what are they going to do? Arrest thousands and thousands and thousands of pastors and Canadians and heads of organizations because we're speaking the truth, and then we all have to go to court, and we're going to come with those facts and we're going to table them in court. That hate speech, you can't consider disagreement hate speech, which is exactly what they're doing. You know what? If you don't like what's being said in a church, don't go to the church. Don't say that, we've got an agenda, which is the new report that I was exposing a couple of weeks ago, where the LGBTQ have gotten thousands of millions of dollars, from the government to write a phony report about homophobia in the churches, and then basically how to infiltrate the churches, that this needs to be fixed and they need to be accepting. It's like, no, we're never going to accept it. We wouldn't accept adultery. We're not going to accept thieves, and consider it normal. Will we minister to them? Will we love on them? But if their intent in their lifestyle and their way of life, don't ask us to come in agreement with you. It's just not practical. If they do it in this area, they better well do it there. What's stopping them from doing it in every other area? Why such a focus on sexuality? Right? Because it's key to tearing down a society, harming our children. And I think pedophilia and putting our children on the altar of Baal is pretty much the worst thing Canadians could accept. And so we're going to stand and we're going to fight this. So how would you say, like, if you were to stand before the Senate right now, what would you say to them? If, say, you're given 2 minutes to give an appeal as to why, here's your your elevator spiel to the Senate as to why you would either instruct them to reject this bill or to bring back the, of course, the controversial clause.
Well, that's quite a challenge you just gave me. I have to think about that. I haven't had time to think about it, but I would first of all say that the language that you use and the assumption that these passages create hate and animosity toward LGBTQ is simply, it's your assumption. It is not fact within the Christian church. And that we, in fact, as Christian believers, do, raise our children. We instruct our churches, our congregants, in how to love people well, how to minister to them, and not to gaslight, which is what you are doing. And we really have had enough of the gaslighting. So we need to be able to love people well and to be recognized for what we do in this nation, what the Christian church does in this nation and has done for decades and centuries, that we are the very bedrock of this society. And you are trying to collapse us, collapse the church by putting into motion these kind of insidious bills that decree that we are hateful people and that the Bible is hate literature. That's probably more than 2 minutes.
That's okay. No, that's okay. So how would you, as a Christian therapist, because I know you have quite a testimony, and if nobody has ever heard Dr. Ann's testimony, I would encourage you to go to Action for Canada, click on search, and put Dr. Ann's name in there, and how she came about, like from her own personal experience. I'm not going to use lived experience. I hate that term. How from your own personal experience that had caused you to pursue being a therapist. So how, as a Christian therapist, have you found that treating your patients who have severe trauma in a Christian environment, how has that transformed their lives? Like, do you have multiple incidents that you could give testimony of? Of course, we're not asking for any details. I'm just saying, have you found that the love of Christ has affected your ability to get through to these people?
In times of financial uncertainty, safeguarding your assets is increasingly important. In response to ongoing inflation, economic challenges, and market instability, many Canadians are adopting the timeless strategy of investing in precious metals. Historically, gold and silver have held their value, safeguarding your assets against economic turmoil. Action for Canada is pleased to announce our partnership with Steve of Sun City Silver, providing valued members of A4C with expanded investment opportunities designed to help you achieve your financial goals. Steve is an ally of the Freedom Movement, and he's offering members of Action for Canada exclusive access to some of Canada's premier prices. By leveraging his connections with Silver Gold Bull, you can access competitive rates for securing your precious metals. Silver Gold Bull is a trusted Canadian leader, offering live pricing 24/7 and boasting nearly 400,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot. For an order of $5,000, be sure to indicate you're an Action for Canada member and receive a complimentary 1967 silver dollar, courtesy of Sun City Silver. Expand your collection further by referring a new customer who places a similar order, and Steve will reward you with a special bonus thank you gift. Your purchase with Steve is a dual investment. You invest in your future while simultaneously supporting the Freedom Movement with a percentage of each sale benefiting Action for Canada. For more information, be sure to visit actionforcanada.com/purchasing-precious-metals/. Secure your assets. Protect your future. Support Action for Canada and the Freedom Movement. The information presented is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended to provide financial, legal, or tax advice, as we are not licensed financial advisors, accountants, or attorneys and cannot provide professional counsel. Be advised that the content and information provided does not create a client relationship. We recommend you consult with a qualified professional advisor before making any financial, legal, or tax decisions. Please note that Action for Canada is not responsible for an individual's financial outcome. Remember, your decisions are your own, and we recommend doing your own research before making any investment.
Absolutely. And I was talking about that today to this other pastor, just integrating theology and psychology in the treatment of trauma survivors, and how wonderful that has been. how the peace of the presence of Jesus can enter into the very depths of their pain and to bring healing and restoration. And there's certain psychological principles that are helpful, but they're helpful. They do not heal, and that's the difference. So you can I love what I've learned in psychology and counseling and all of those things. Some of it throughout, I think is like anything. I never dealt with labels because I think they're stigmatizing. You talk about stigmatizing. You don't want to call someone a narcissist or personality disordered if you're really treating them, because you want to be kind and loving. That does not mean that you do not challenge and confront. Absolutely you do, but you confront and challenge with the love of Christ and the word of God pertinent to their situations. And the Bible says that Jesus came to heal the brokenhearted and set the captive free. And so, how beautiful that is for someone who has been ensconced in this place in their soul that has been so broken, and they really like captives. And so the word of God is powerful to transform lives, and the peace of his presence and his love pouring over people. I've had so many people that came into my office, and I'm not practicing anymore, but I'm retired from private practice, but they would say to me, after sometimes I didn't always pray with people, but I always asked if they would like that. And most of them, I think 99% did. And some I prayed regularly with because that was their desire. And one of the things that they repeatedly said was, as you're praying, or just even when I come into your office, there is a peace here I've never experienced before. And certainly, and I used to pray that every day, that the peace of the presence of Jesus would just permeate that room, but also that it would begin then to really go deep into their spirit and into their soul. And there is something very profound. So the first book I wrote, Tanya, wasn't about sexuality at all. It was called Deep Impact, the integrating theology and psychology. So exactly to what you're talking about. I don't talk about my first book very often because it's more specialized for trauma survivors, and it's more specifically looking at how to treat complex trauma. So from a very holistic Christian perspective.
And that's wonderful, Anne, because you have written so many incredible resources that would give our viewers great comfort. And I think that it's really important. You've written, is it 5 or 6 books?
Six now. I have one still I want to get written, but anyways, hopefully it will come soon.
Okay, before we bring up the ultimate deception, I want to talk to you for a moment about this idea of biological reality and how Bill C9, it's an attack against biological reality. And the reason is that if they're going to try to criminalize scripture, then they're going to pick on those verses that say God created them man and woman. So what do you have to say about one, biological reality? What is it that one of the response to the claim that biological sex is merely a social construct. Why don't we talk about that for just a moment?
That makes me laugh. The social construct is gender identity. Everything is flipped upside down.
Yeah.
That's the whole aspect of queer theory, right? To turn everything good into bad and to flip everything upside down. So to me, no, sexuality and sex is not a social construct. It's a biological reality. We are, for instance, of course, chromosomally, we define sex as XX female or XY for male. And sex is detectable very early in utero. And science is clear on that fact. There's no kind of controversy over that. Now, there's a couple tests that they do regularly on women for other reasons sometimes, but there's an NIPT test, which is non-invasive parental blood testing. And so it it's done between 10 and 13 weeks. 99% accurate, and they can tell whether that little baby, and I'll call them babies, fetuses, I guess is fine too, but not blobs, but they can tell the sex at 10 to 13 weeks. Hello. And then there's another test. It's called CVS, and it's a test that takes a small sample of cells, and it's from the placenta, so it's relatively non-invasive. I wouldn't suggest anyone have these tests. I don't like to see young moms having those kind of tests, because I always think anything into the uterus is invasive to the babe. But those cells are taken from the placenta, and that test is 100% accurate. And again, 10 to 13 weeks. That's pretty early, right?
Right.
So this is not something we have to disagree about. There is no disagreement. It's fact. It's absolute fact. And any stage genetic testing is absolutely without error defining sex.
This whole agenda is based on non-reality. It's unscientific. It is somebody's sexual, even depravity, who got into a position where they thought they need other people to affirm them. And so because they're struggling within themselves, and I'm sure you as a therapist have dealt with that time and time again. So now what they're mass producing in our schools by introducing all of this in kindergarten is these children, I say mass production of social contagions based on non-reality. It's unscientific and based on other people's delusions and need to be self-affirmed. And so when you project that onto children and demand it and demand it and demand it from society, they've worn us down. Our kids are more stressed than ever in the history of time, and on medication to try to help them manage it. They go to school in their pajamas. They look slobby. There's nothing professional. The standard has dropped so low, and then those children are also easier to control and to manage. So it's a mix of reasons, I believe, that we're going through this, I'm going to call it an attack, and against everything that's natural. And as I said earlier, our societal norms. Now, there's a couple of questions here that people have submitted. And again, I would encourage people, I don't know if there's anyone with their hand up, Terenzio, but it said, do your books address the causes of homosexuality?
I talk about that in Closing the Floodgates.
In Closing the Floodgates?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
About some of the various elements of that. And trauma, again, I want to say to people that trauma is central to every one of these groups. Absolutely central. Mm-hmm. And usually a high percentage, and I think it's over 60%, and I've been quoted other places of higher than that have been sexually abused as children, and most homosexual men have been sexually abused by other men. And that's why this whole area, this whole the conversion therapy bill, so-called, and now Bill C-9, all of this is so that we will not treat individuals for what really is causing them such distress.
Exactly.
And that's the issue, so that we can shut them down, so that they will continue to be distressed, because we find that with those who are gender confused, they're distressed, they're vulnerable. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't decrease after transitioning. Oh, and I was going to say something here, because you stole my thunder. I want to tell you.
Oh, okay.
talking about that study.
Yes.
Good for you for getting that on so quickly, because that just came out last week on April 4th. And that was a longitudinal study. That is the best kind of study you can have. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it was a nationwide cohort. over 16,000 individuals, matched controls, and they were under 23 years old. So this is the most specific study I've seen like this, and it backs up every other study that I've cited that is counter to the scientific research that is promoted by our government and by our education. But psychiatric needs do not subside. They do not subside after the medical gender reassignment. So so no matter whether it's hormones or the full medical reassignment surgeries, the psychiatric needs actually increase. Makes sense to me, because you lop off someone's breasts or genitals, you are going to end up with like this young transitioner. It just breaks my heart to hear her and to hear others like her who have been so deluded, who've been lied to. It makes me angry in my spirit at the lies, because I've said over and over and over that telling the truth is kind and loving. Quit lying to our children. You're confusing them more. They're just wanting to know truth, and they're being sold a bill of goods.
Yeah, thank you for reviewing that again, Dr. Ann, because I think that this report is very likely going to be used in lawsuits. We know the massive win down in the United States is worth mentioning again, where the woman who had been lured into this culture of destruction, and she came out against her psychiatrist and the doctor who performed the surgery, and she was awarded $2 million. And then I don't think it's a coincidence that a doctor who performed these surgeries has shut his doors in Quebec, because it was a big deal in the headlines, because BC, people could go to Quebec and get these surgeries so that they could get them quicker. And now that that door has closed, they're also worried, about the delays. And so I'm hoping this is a shout up across the bow to these surgeons to say, and these psychiatrists that are promoting this and facilitating this, that your day in court may be coming. And so how much longer do you want to go and make a buck off of destroying a child's life and getting them permanently on, into the medical system? So I think that's very, very important. This report is going to be vital. I like also what you just said about the homosexual men, that it's proven there's a statistics for both lesbians and homosexuals that sexual abuse as a child is very, very common. And it doesn't necessarily have to be sexual abuse. It could be parents that were abusive or neglected their children. A child is so delicate in our care. And that is why I've been so irate about what's happening in the school system, starting now in daycare, but in kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, just forming these beautiful little minds. I'm bringing my grandson, who just turned 2, to church, and he sits there with me every Sunday, and he doesn't even want to go into the children's section. And then we're driving home in the car, and he's got his little hand in the air, praising the Lord and humming. And I'm like, I just thought about what they're teaching in our schools. It is about how we give instruction to our children as to what they're going to face in life and how they're going to be able to manage. And somebody could say from that community, it's like, oh, you're indoctrinating your child. No, we are nurturing their childhood and protecting their innocence and teaching them about morality. And then if they took a turn after all of that, when they're 20 or 25 years old and get rebellious, whatever, that's on them. But at least they've been nurtured. And they generally, when they get mature enough, always come around back again to being really good, solid, decent people. And we need society at large supporting this and supporting our children. So what do you feel is the best way that our viewers could be involved in ensuring that this change takes place and the momentum continues to grow?
Well, the first thing I would say is that we must acknowledge biological reality. We must over and over and over again acknowledge it and support that reality. And then we have to recognize the psychological complexity of those who are struggling in the whole area of gender identity. There is a complexity, so it's really important to understand that and make sure that care of these individuals. And when I think of this, think of parents who have been cut off and had their children removed because they wouldn't affirm that child's delusion. And so children have been so abused, and their support systems, they, the gender ideologists talk about supporting the child, and they can't, their parents aren't supporting them in their transitioning. But, true support of the child has been robbed from parents because they're told to support a delusion. They're told to lie to their children. And the other thing is, if they refuse to lie to the children, then the people around them, the adults around this child who is now, part of a LGBT group or something like that, because they circle around kind of like hyenas. Anyways, I shouldn't say that. These are people.
No, it's okay. No,
But they just, it's like a feeding frenzy with these young, innocent, very vulnerable children. And then their very support systems ripped out from under them. Their parents are ripped away from them because they are told they can't trust their parents because their parents didn't agree with their delusion. And so family ties are broken. It's very strategic, and it damages the whole family. And you see families, aunts and uncles against the parents, and it's just a mess. And it's all part of the agenda to annihilate family and to annihilate individuals down the road, right? Through, all of the medical care and all of the things that go on, like this young woman said, the long-term repercussions are so serious. So to help parents understand that we're not defined by confusion. We are defined by redemption, and our identity is in Jesus Christ as believers, and truth is objective. We do not have to sacrifice the truth that's on our side. Biological reality matches up, and scientific reality matches up with biblical truth perfectly. We're fearfully and wonderfully made, and those truths match what science tells us. I mean, if you've ever watched, and I watched not too long ago a video someone had done of the baby growing in the womb. Oh my goodness. It was so profound, so professionally done. And how can you deny that as truth?
Mm-hmm. And that reality of holding their parent holding their baby on the day they were born and being designated either male or female, and now waiting until they designate themselves. I mean, it's completely insane. There's a huge amount of, I believe, mental illness that's involved. And so just to build on what you just said, as far as the history, this has been incrementally and very strategically planned to break down society. So they introduced the bathroom bill, Bill C-16, allowing biological men into women and children's spaces, and then including gender identity and gender expression in the Human Rights Code. So in other words, that anybody identifying as a different gender, the made up genders, that they have human rights. So don't you mess with them. And then immediately after that, they started to fast track bringing the SOGI and the curriculum, not curriculum, but it's been as a resource into the schools. And in kindergarten, they start by introducing the different kind of families. And then they start talking about pronouns. Now, a key thing that Dr. Ann said for parents who are listening right now and facing this is that they are doing this to your children. You're dropping them off at schools thinking they are in a safe space, but they're not. You get an activist teacher in, and many of them are mandated. They're being trained in the faculties of education to teach these radical ideologies to your children and to turn them against you. And that is not an exaggeration. This is the best warning I can give you. Take your kids out of school right now and homeschool them. I don't care if they're in high school or where they are. Figure it out. find a way, because you don't know when your child will become vulnerable. So now they've introduced this to the schools, and from K to 6, they're going along teaching the kids, and then they're introducing the idea that, if you changed your hair or identified as an owl, and your friend's parents didn't support them, how would you respond? It's like, oh, I'd support my friend. And that's the beginning of allyship within the schools.
Yes.
So that what Dr. Ann is saying, when that child comes and now identifies as the opposite sex to their parents, their heads are spinning, saying, what are you talking about? I was there the day you were born. This is not biological reality, and we're not going to stand by you on that, in that lie. And from there, it can escalate very, very quickly for you as parents, because of the indoctrination and the brainwashing that has taken place in the school. And so on our website, under current issues, drop down to the LGBTQ selection. At the very top of the page is a video that I've done on the SOGI Toolkit for Teachers. It's the same across the nation. And from K to 6, I show you step by step their resource, showing you what they're teaching to the kids and how they're introducing this. And then also scroll down and listen to Sarah's testimony, the gal that had been lured into this, and by the time she was 20, what her journey was. And you'll have a better understanding of what your child has been exposed to, and then you can start to make some decisions about how you want to address this. So what else would you suggest to a parent whose 14-year-old daughter or son is now coming home and identifying as the opposite sex, locking themselves in their room? What would you suggest, Dr. Ann?
Well, I would suggest going back to the biological truth. But I would ask, I think parents need to be very strategic in how they approach their child. And, a child coming to a parent saying, I know I'm a boy, or I know I'm a girl, the opposite to the sex that they were born with. They obviously are, because sex is observed. It's not assigned. But to be able to ask that child when they come with such a claim, so what makes you think that this has happened to you, that you are now a boy or a girl, whichever it is, and get them starting talking, give lots of silence, ask a question, wait, and let them begin to explain, well, Tommy, he's decided he's a girl, and so I'm going to be, it can be something as simple as that, or something they heard in school, and that girls and women are treated so much nicer than boys. Do you know that has been, I heard one detransitioner share that they wanted to transition to female because females are treated nicer than boys.
Yes.
And they get more privileges. And, so there's all kinds of factors. So the more a parent can take a few steps back, try not to hyperventilate when your child tells you this. I mean, I can't imagine. And I look at my own life and think how easy it would have been as a 12-year-old. Absolutely. I would have been on that track big time, because I had all the markers for it. And, I couldn't have imagined telling my parents, mind you, but there's just so much that we as parents need to unpack for our children. The other thing is, and I'll suggest this because it's a handy book to have, and so that's The Ultimate Deception that I wrote. I'm going to share this with you, by the way, because I think this is interesting. I put this in the top of chapter 2 because the British Columbia Teachers Federation, their handbook on gender education states that gender is a state of mind. And when I found out they had written that in their handbook, I was like, gotcha. Like, hello, this is a state of mind. This means that it is a mental complexity. There's something going on in your mind, and it's not healthy. And whether you call it mental illness or not, it is a mental state of mind. And so we can all have states of mind, right? And so I thought that was quite interesting. But that book, well, it's based on research. So that's helpful, especially for parents of teenagers, because you need to understand what is truth about gender affirming care and what is lies. That's the biggest thing. I think that's the best thing you can do. And Tanya, you have stuff on your website for that too. So that would be my starting point if a child came to me as a parent, just saying, "Boy, I need to find out more about this, and tell me what you understand about it." And
Absolutely. Detrenzo, can you bring the book up again just so our viewers can see it? I highly recommend getting Dr. Ann's book, The Ultimate Deception, The Truth of Gender Affirming Care. And, as she mentioned, that this is a state of in the mind, and how they are influencing that in the school system is tragic. Even on social media, if you guys, if people are allowing the kids on TikTok or Instagram, it should be get them a flip phone and cut them off from all of this. Have your home computer set. Yes, they may see it at a friend's house, but at least you have to do everything you can to protect your children and limit it. And so also consider taking your child for a car ride, doing something that they love, horseback riding, going to the lake. Take them. And I know that everybody's very busy. You're working maybe 2 jobs just trying to put food on the table and take care of the rent, but you get one chance at this with your child. If you cannot take your child out of the school system, then use Action for Canada's Notice of Liability, which is on the same political LGBT. I'll actually show it after Dr. Ann is off. I'll show you the page where you can get some of these resources and information and serve your teacher. We have this every year in August. We're gearing parents up for the first week of school throughout September to serve the teachers and the principal the notice of liability against SOGI 123. Like, don't let me come to school and find out that you are using class time to teach my child this nonsense. And so you serve them, they're on notice, and even serve teachers who are on our side. Because if you have a radical activist principal, that is their shield and their guard to say, I'm not taking a chance at being held personally liable, so I will not be adhering to teaching these children information that is obviously right here, it spells it out, that it's causing measurable harm. And we'll probably update our notice of liability one more time to include this new finished report, so that we are driving home the message to these people that you have been informed. You cannot claim ignorance on this matter or this issue. So, Dr. Ann, I really appreciate you coming on. I know that somebody has asked a question in the chat as well. Where can a homosexual go for help? Where can somebody get assistance if they are questioning and struggling at this point?
First of all, it is illegal to help in Canada. So you need to understand that. So if you are someone who is struggling with thoughts or behavior that are LGBTQ related, and you don't want those thoughts or behaviors, finding a therapist is going to be extremely difficult, and I would not advise you online. If you want to contact me later, then that's fine. I can talk to you, email me, but there are few and far between. You may have to go to the US. I know some detransitioners who found therapists in the US because they have freedom in the states that are not succumbing to the gender ideology. So that's the only options. Even pastors are hesitant because of liability. Because if an individual that you don't know comes into your church and they are struggling with these things and wants counseling, it's pretty it's pretty scary for pastors because
Well, it's concerning too, because the fact is they're trying to infiltrate the churches and claim homophobia in this. So there's no doubt in my mind that there are even activists who would try to test the waters in a church to see if a pastor would lovingly help them if they claimed and lied about wanting to move through this and toward a heterosexual lifestyle and to deal with the trauma in their lives. And that's what I was saying with these strategies is as they introduced these bills in gender identity and expression, the next then was Bill C-4, that when your child came home, now it's illegal to talk to them. You can only affirm them. It has been so strategic that this last here, I don't call it the last attack, but the next one with Bill C-9 is just part of this measure to try to crush people into the very words that you have to have compelled speech. I'm not going to join somebody in their delusions. And another strategy that people could also do if you work for a company, Dallas Brody mentioned this, that if you've been encouraged that you have to provide your so-called pronouns after you sign your name on a letter or a communication within the city, maybe you're a municipality as a nurse, there is absolutely no law stating that you have to comply with that. So be bold, do your part in just signing your name. And if anybody comes towards you, they know legal actions are starting everywhere. Somebody had asked, is there a lawsuit in Canada regarding the surgeons? There is a lady in Alberta who is taking legal action for being indoctrinated into the system. I don't think it's against the surgeons, but there may be cases, I won't go into too much length, but I believe that they will be coming forth in Canada in the near future, especially with them breaking ground in the United States and with this new peer-reviewed studies that are also coming through that would help in a court of law. No, we don't know how many children have been transitioned here in Canada. I can tell you the one surgeon, it was either 2,500 or 3,500 breast removals that Dr. McLean has done. That's one surgeon in Canada. That's thousands and thousands of lives that are being destroyed. And yes, and then another question by Gil was, before the woke perspective of trans, were there actually children who felt they were in the wrong body? Or is this a new phenomenon? Yeah.
I'd love to answer that. Okay. So this has all come about because, well, it is an agenda, but there have always been children in a very, very small percentage, like 0.0014% of boys and 0.3% of girls that ever were gender dysphoric. And it was called, back in the day before 2013, it was called gender identity disorder, because it was a mental disorder that the American Psychological Society Association actually identified, and such a small percentage of children. So in Canada, there was a clinic run by Dr. Ken Zucker in Toronto, and he treated those children with behavioral therapy mostly, and family therapy. He treated the parents, he treated the child, because this is a whole family issue. And as you find with most issues with children, like, I never saw children by themselves. I saw them with their parents, because if you see the child and the family dynamic, you're going to understand what's going on for the child. And so that's how he treated it. 2015, he was very quickly removed from CAMH, and because he was treating with behavioral therapy, and that's a no-no, because this isn't a behavior, they think. So yes, there are children that have gender identity. Well, it was gender identity disorder, and it is it's a distress that they have, and you work through the distress, and you provide them with tools to help with the anxiety, and you begin redirecting their mind. Zucker used to, take the girls' dresses away from the boys and give them boy toys, and he would instruct parents to do that. Could you imagine now what an uproar But, it wasn't 20 years ago or 25 years ago. That's what you did. And you helped these children. Now, as you said, thousands and thousands of children have been mutilated for this and on this altar of sacrifice.
Right. And all because these radical activists got into government, like David Lametti, Justin Trudeau. I could just list the name of them that were behind Bill C-4. The other thing I want to mention about what is transpiring right now is that when you introduce children to sexually explicit books in the school system, it is breaking down their natural defenses against predatory behavior. And so the other thing, because we know there's a massive problem with pedophilia throughout society, and many of these activists that are pushing this agenda are themselves pedophiles. And so they are going to justify this and use whatever means they can, because formerly, before the Justin Trudeau era, pedophiles pretty well knew that their life was at risk if they got caught. If they were put in prison, the other inmates, it is reported, would actually go after them, harm them severely, if not kill them. And so now they've created this environment by getting into office and by pushing this so that it's become very, very difficult to push back. But we got to remember we're the majority. And so, Dr. Ann, is there anything else that you'd like to mention before we?
Just trying to think if there's anyone, you'd mentioned lived experience. And I was thinking about this, that we've been, kind of bombarded with this idea that we're ignoring lived experience of these children. But the reality is lived experience matters, absolutely, but policies must be based on reality and truth and evidence. And so that's what it comes down to. And so anything that's not based on evidence, real scientific evidence, like we provided tonight, and the reality that these children are being abused and harmed for their whole lives, is not helpful, and it's not going to help the child, the family, or society.
No, it's tragic, and it's going to take us a while to undo this as we take back the faculties of education, as we take back public education systems. I've never really believed in that system, for too long in the last couple of decades. Homeschooling, community, church schools, these type of things are going to give us, our children, the best possible chance at succeeding in society. But we still have an obligation to protect children who can't be removed from those systems. It shouldn't be a free-for-all, and we shouldn't turn our back on them. So we got to fight and continue to move forward. The solutions that I'm going to promote in just a moment here, I think are going to be very helpful to citizens. But you can't be an armchair listener. You have to get actively involved in that. And so be involved within your community. We are asking people across the nation to consider becoming chapter leaders. If you don't have one in your community, if there is one, join the chapter. You have gifts and talents. You may not even realize, even your presence at a chapter leader is encouragement. And then you go out and you invite 2 more people at the next meeting, and it's benefiting what we're doing with just a small Gideon's Army for Action for Canada. I'm not taking away from what other groups are doing. I can only give testimony to what Action for Canada is being blessed with and achieving. And so this is one way that you can have a huge effect, is by joining us and getting involved directly in your community. So on that, Dr. Ann, I just want to thank you so much for joining us on the show. And hopefully it won't be so long before you're on again. And you always have so much good information to provide to our viewers. And I know that maybe there were questions that we didn't get to that people have. I would say maybe, would it be okay if there was a question that we could pass that on to you as well, if something private or personal got missed where somebody's really struggling? Because we don't want you to leave this show having a higher hope of what you would have received as far as information and still walking away feeling lost. Even reach out to call2@actionforcanada.com. Let us know that you saw the show with Dr. Ann, and we will try to, if we can, provide you some support in some way. So again, Dr. Ann, thank you so much. God continue to bless you in the work that you're doing.
Thank you. I always appreciate everything you've done, Tanya, and I appreciate being on your show. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right. Well, that Dr. Ann is just amazing. I wish we could literally spend a couple of hours speaking on the issues. Sometimes I wonder, would it be an idea to have individuals who are in this situation and hurting come on the show and have a real life conversation about how to deal with these issues? But as Dr. Ann has said, and I've mentioned, with the threat of Bill C-4, I'm not going to have it restrict us, but there is the reality that what they've put in place, those radical activists are going to demand that people get that they would get arrested. If you can believe that this is even how we're functioning in Canadian society at this point. So I would like to finish off the show. I was trying to do something in the background here. My screen was doing something really crazy. So I'm just going to mention that out loud. We'll delete that. I'm just going to share my screen for a moment because I said we're all about solutions and action. All right. I had mentioned the LGBTQ page that Action for Canada has tremendous amount of resources and information on. So if you go to current issues in our main menu, and then you drop down, you'll see that when you drop down, it'll say political LGBTQ. That just happens to be what we named it many years ago. If you're struggling and you're within this community and you're watching tonight or the video when it's posted, click on this page, Hope and Inspiration, because we do have resources there to help you. There's detransitioners, so-called detransitioners, videos, testimonies of what helped them. And it truly was a journey back to God. And so we would encourage you, even if you're here angry tonight. I know some of you may come, you're really upset that we're talking about this issue and we're not supporting the position that you're in right now, but we want to love on you and say there is a better way, there is hope for you, there is healing for you. And so I would encourage you to come to this page and check out that first link. This is the video I was talking about where I go step by step through the SOGI toolkit to show how kids are being indoctrinated and lured into this program through kindergarten to grade 6, so that they have this great allyship before they hit high school or junior high. It's really frightening. Sarah's video is also easily accessible right here. They go hand in hand. If you have a child that's facing this right now, I would even encourage you to sit down and watch this video with them, because they may not be able to see where they will be from 20 years from now, but Sarah can help show them. And I think that her testimony is critically important. So much more good information on here. This page also has the notices of liability that I mentioned, access to flyers, all kinds of information. Just keep scrolling down. You'll see statistics and information that you can share with families, hurting people, loved ones, etc. This is the action that we did recently, demanding that this program be taken out of the school. We know kids can be exposed to it during, social media times on TikTok and stuff, but the main one where they're pumping out these delusions and really harming the hearts and minds of our kids is the access to that they have to them 6 or 7 hours a day. All right, you can do more homeschooling your child in 2 hours at the end of the day, and you will make sure that they are in a safe environment. So just also keep that in mind. Get together with family, cousins, your community, and just make it happen. Pull them out of the school. And so we've got a letter there. It helps to educate you when we write these letters as well. We're asking you to help educate elected officials, because so many of them have been indoctrinated themselves into believing that this LGBTQ industry is actually a victim rather than the aggressors who are attacking anybody and everybody that doesn't support them. And we got to get these people removed from office. So the other one was June is coming up. Please take our letter, print the letter, and start sending it to your school board trustees, to your principal, and in a kind way and in a patient way, ask them to at least read the letter to understand who is behind the pride flag. Gilbert Baker. So that's what flags are for. It's about proclaiming power. And Robert Hogue is the one that created the trans flag. And he was a pedophile and a sadomasochist. And are these really the people that we should be celebrating? Is this, knowing that this is what this flag represents, is this really, are you really, really proud to have that going up the flagpole? education is everything. All right, enough. The social engineering is done. The majority of Canadians are done, and now is the time to tip the scale completely in our favor. Okay, next week there will be no Empower Hour. I have a really exciting day, but I'm going to be traveling and heading to Ottawa on Monday. I'm going to be in Calgary by Wednesday and in Red Deer, and I'm going to be back home by Friday. And I can't quite go into the details of it all, but let's just say God is showing favor upon action for Canada. He's listening to the prayers of the righteous. We are in the middle of our prayer walk for revival, our 7-week prayer walk for revival from Passover to Pentecost. And we've told you every year, God answers amazing prayers. And I would say today was a huge answer to prayer. And I'm going to really look forward to the results of of more of what's coming. And I look forward in the near future to be able to fill you in on some of those details. So the scripture for today that we will never cease proclaiming is Genesis 1:27. God created mankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them. Amen. And so Genesis, for those of you who are not aware, is in the Old Testament, but God reaffirms that in the New Testament, where it says, he answered, have you not read that the one who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, whatever God has joined together, let no one separate. And that's from Matthew 19:4-6. And I'm going to say an amen, hallelujah to that as well. It shows you that the New Testament and the Old Testament work hand in hand, and that God created male and female, and this incredible bond between a husband and wife for the most precious and special reason, and that reproduction only happens through this process. All right, if you throw 100 lesbians on an island for 100 years, you will come back and find the bones of 100 lesbians. And the same, for gay men. And what a mess with the transgender community. It is heart-wrenching and heartbreaking that they have been so deceived, that somebody has taken advantage of their hurt and suffering and pain as a child, and that they have built a business on it. I mean, I am gobsmacked by this. And I just hope that we as a society can be very, very determined that we will not give in to the word of not preaching the word of God, that we will continue to proclaim these truths and reality. 2 Timothy 2-4 says, preach the word, be prepared in season and out of season, correct, rebuke, and encourage with great patience and careful instruction. For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Does that sound familiar? Do we sound like we're living in an age right now with these, verifiable truths and facts? So it said, instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. And what more than this gender-bending myth? It's just not reality. And so you can see why the truth matters, why we need all to stand together and unite. And finally, my favorite verse is Galatians 6:9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. And I started the show off by mentioning some of the fantastic wins, and a big shout out to Daniel Smith and the Minister of Education and others who are putting this legislation and policies in place. Just continue to pray for them. Continue that they will not feel any need to stand down or stand back or mince their words, that they will be bold, because this is what the majority of the population are looking for. And so pray blessings on them. Pray for the premiers in other provinces to have a heart change. And again, in your community, start now to raise up good, godly leaders who you trust. Help them to get known in the community, and then support them financially, support them door knocking. And then on the day of voting, become a scrutineer. to make sure, because we got voter fraud happening everywhere, but if your nose is right in there and 2 eyeballs and we fill that room with scrutineers from our side, it will lessen the opportunity and the chances for that to happen. We have to step into these roles if we expect that we will turn Canada around, and we have to continue to pray, because God says when we humble ourselves, truly humble ourselves and repent over what's happened in Canada, that God will heal our land. We got to turn from these wicked ways. We got to boldly speak the truth, to admit and advance forward in truth and righteousness. So God bless you, and God bless Canada.
Chapters across the nation. We are going to be in every town and every city, and we are going to build communities within these communities of like-minded people who are actually going to care for one another again and love on each other and give each other the help when they're down. We are going to use the teams and the people that build within chapters to support our businesses. The government's actions are completely 100% unlawful. Judgment will again be found on justice, and those with virtuous hearts will pursue it. You have a virtuous heart if you are here today pursuing freedom and righteousness. And then verse 23 comes along with a promise. God says He will turn the sins of evil people back on them. He will destroy them for their sins. I take great comfort in that, because I serve a mighty living God who has allowed us to go through this season of discomfort, because we as a nation had turned our backs on Him, and we need to get right. So I am just going to thank you so much. I'm going to say God bless you, and God bless Canada.